Welcome back to the moment where every week is a year. I can't believe it's still January. But we're here excitingly with our friend Wayne Felton, who is a big TikTok creator. I'm sure you've seen his face. He's also, he talks about pop culture. He talks about politics. He writes for The Root, and he happens to live in Minneapolis. And I've been watching him break this down from the inside out. Here on the show today, like I said, we're going to be talking about life on the ground in Minneapolis generally and in the aftermath of ICE killing an ICU nurse, Alex Pretti, over the weekend. And, you know, it seems like the Trump administration might be trying to pull back. We're going to talk about that. Then my big TikTok creators here, we're going to talk about the ownership fallout now that TikTok is owned by the US, and like raise your hand if you made an ICE video that got 0 views on TikTok over the weekend. We're going to talk about the celebrities who are suddenly getting political because they must be listening to the moment. They were all out in Sundance loud and proud, maybe. And then we're going to talk about the upcoming potential government shutdown with civics educator and content creator Ben Sheehan. So here we go. Welcome to the show. If you live under a rock, what you missed this weekend is that we all woke up Saturday morning and opened social media and watched another in the street execution. ICE murdered an ICU nurse. They shot him several times. Then the Trump administration came out and said that he was brandishing a weapon, which became like a weird Second Amendment conversation. And it was like the upside down over here. Which is why I think things might be changing with their narrative. I just play what now former border chief Greg Bivino had to say about the killing, because it was pretty cynical. Yana, do we have that clip?
The victim are the Border Patrol agents. The suspect put himself in that situation. The victims are the Border Patrol agents there.
The victims are the Border Patrol agents there. The Atlantic has since reported that he's been removed from his role and is now coming back to California, where he's expected to retire soon. Then also, by the way, I want to throw out there, Pam Bondi sent a letter to Tim Walz demanding SNAP and Medicaid information, that he end sanctuary policies, and that he turn over the voter rolls, which like put up all of my spidey senses. I want to talk about Ben with that, but that's sort of generally what we missed. Wayne, give us the real, like, those are the headlines. Tell us about what life is like there.
Yeah, it's been really weird just for the last several weeks. So I think there was a lot coming into the new year itself. People were really worried about the fact that ICE was here. We hadn't gotten fully into Metro Surge at that point, but we were highly aware of their presence and the impact that they were having on the community. By the time we got into Operation Metro Surge, which came on the other side of Nick Shirley lying about daycares in Minnesota, like that's what, and just to take it a step back from that, Nick Shirley ended up in Minnesota because I think it's Christina DeMuth, and I might be messing up her first name, but last name is DeMuth. She's the Speaker of the House for the state of Minnesota. She's running for governor. And what she was attempting to do was to besmirch the character of Tim Walz going into this gubernatorial race. And so she invited Nick Shirley into Minnesota and kind of fed him the story. We've been prosecuting fraud in this state for the last 3 years. The governor allocated money specifically to make sure that we had the people to adjudicate the fraud that was happening. But that becomes a national story. Governor Walz steps down. That was a hard day for me. He stepped down from the re-election run. But that was a hard day for me. I think Governor Tim Walz is a really good human. And then Metro Surge happens. And so all of this is happening at the same time. We're in the news for something and everyone's arguing that like our neighbor is people who are United States citizens, because Somalis are United States citizens. If they are somehow illegals who need to be kicked out. So that's happening. Get the governor information, the Metro Surge. And so like, as that's happening, we're having this weird dichotomy where on the one hand, we are all collectively trying to live as normally as possible. On the other hand, we are living like dead occupations. Like I am on several Signal chats, which apparently it was just released. Kash Patel wants to investigate the Signal chats that people are using to track ICE.
Really?
That just dropped this morning, right? But I'm in several Signal chats where people are literally, and just group chats where people are saying, hey, heads up, you live in this town, ICE is there, right? We're communicating on that level. We're actively talking to teachers about, is ICE circling your building? We have families who are carpooling to school to ensure that the kids can still go to school when the parents are afraid to go out, right? I have friends who are teachers there are parents who have emailed and said, if my kid goes home and I'm not home, this is who you should call next, right? And so, like, when we talk about these things on a macro level, everyone wants to make this about, and I know when I hear the arguments, like, there are some people who shouldn't be here and they should be turned over. This is having such a profound impact on our ability to grocery shop when ICE agents are walking through grocery stores, our ability to go to sporting events, our ability to go to school or to work. There are people who are not going to work. People are calling for the governor to have an eviction moratorium because people aren't going to work because they are afraid. And everywhere I go, because I coach my son's basketball team, and so I just talk to parents between games. And every day, because everybody sees me on social media now, they want to share with me a story of their neighbor or their friend, right? Who it's like, oh, I have a family friend who's here legally, but was sent to a detention center and they bled out their life savings to get them out of the detention center. But now he can't go to his construction job to work because even though he is here legally, he has legal residence, they keep raiding the construction sites, which is also, and I'm sorry, I'm a high horse at this point, but like you can't simultaneously say we need to get the price of housing down while tariffing all of the materials that come in that help us build homes and then detaining all the people on the construction sites. And so to the point about the tide turning, I think that nothing for this administration is working, and this is working the least. Yeah. And you have American citizens, myself included, who are terrified about just being outside because, and I keep saying this, they are killing white people. Do you know how bad of a situation we're in when it's white people who are getting killed? Yeah. Once again, I live in Minnesota. So George Floyd, Philando Castile, or Jamar Clark, Dante Wright, we can run the experiences. But when Renee Good was killed, I was like, yo, they killing white women. And even then it was like, oh, blue-haired, wine mom, right. Liberal. I was like, okay, cool, sexism's still alive and well. But now all of a sudden, everybody's like, we just can't stand for this because it's a white dude.
Yeah. Right now, I heard.
Yeah,
go. Hey, I think the two, if someone asked me what are the three biggest things that have happened in the last 10 years, I would say COVID, the murder of George Floyd, and this. And so I'm just, obviously, Minnesota was impacted by COVID. All states were impacted by COVID. But why do you think the two biggest things that have happened to this country in the last 10 years have happened in Minneapolis, not in Los Angeles, not in New York City? Why is it Minneapolis?
Yeah, so I think that on the one hand, from a political standpoint, there's this idea of the coastal elites, right? So there's this idea that people who live on the coast are out of touch and, whatever it may be. I think that COVID provided the perfect scenario for George Floyd's murder to have the impact that it had. I think if we weren't inside and using social media at a clip we never had before up until that point, because 2020 changed the game. Suddenly we were bored in the house and we're in the house bored, right? And so the fact that we couldn't escape that visual and the virality of people seeing it, I also said at the time, the fact that it wasn't a gun made a huge difference.
Yes. Well, yes.
Wait,
had he been shot, there would have been a lot of conversation about, lethal use of force, and that's what cops do. It was the act of the type of chokehold, the way that it went. And if you watch the video, I'll admit to this day, I've never watched that video. The last video I watched was Philando Castile bleeding out in his car. And after that, I was like, I'll never do this again. Yeah. I just believe the videos exist, right? But listening to people talk about it, listening to George Floyd cry for minutes on end, I think just wrecked people. And Minneapolis as a place in particular sits in this weird positionality where we are extremely Midwest. When you think Minnesota, you think, oh, all shucks, right? Like, so we sit in that space where people feel like there's a relatability. Almost all of the major, voices you hear on the news come from Minnesota. We have this universality of the way that we talk and things like that. And we are a very liberal place. We're the only state in the union that did not vote for Reagan, right? Like we had the most progressive legislative slate anywhere in the country in 2022, right? Like we're sitting in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I think that happened and it was the perfect storm in regards to George Floyd. I think now, once again, all of those factors being at play, I think that Trump has said publicly, like he believes he won Minnesota 3 times, right? He Tim Walz, because I think Tim Walz is the perfect encapsulation. Like he is a gun-owning veteran who is a straight white male who is balding, right? Like everything about his personality should be conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And he is overseeing the most progressive state in the country. And so I think that makes a lot of folks really upset. And I think the president in particular very upset. And so I think that we are the perfect place for the revolution to start because, Prince said, he named his band The Revolution, right? But I think we're the perfect place for the revolution to start because we aren't this coastal elite place. We have these deeply Midwestern family values. And a part of that Midwestern family value is we take care of each other. We look out for each other. We make sure that everybody has what they need. And that's what Minnesotans have been doing. Minnesotans, the mutual aid that has gone out, like I said, the way that people are carpooling and communicating, the way that folks have become legal observers. Like you can't go anywhere in Minneapolis without hearing whistles and drums and seeing people following these agents. I know it is irritating the agents, but we as a state, we are a refugee state, right? The Somalis came as refugees. Before that, it was the Hmong population that came as refugees. This is what we do as a state. And so we are perfectly positioned to be the place that represents the types of values we all talk about while also doing them in a place that is 88% white.
Yeah. I think that really does, though, bring up a really good point of something that happened over the weekend, because you brought up the fact that, like, one of the reasons that George Floyd's murder took hold of this nation was because we were home. We were on social media. So over the weekend, I couldn't get on my favorite, in quotation marks, social media app, which is TikTok, because there were these TikTok, I guess they're saying they were just like a data outage or something. But I couldn't get on TikTok. I'm sure either one of you, or I couldn't post on TikTok. Let me say that. I couldn't post on TikTok. Nothing was uploading. And I just felt like, okay, the ownership has now just changed to make it partially and primarily US owned. And now all of a sudden, within hours, I can't post anything. And we know that people use social media to communicate what's happening on the ground. So I guess like my first question to all of you is like, a lot of people are saying, get off TikTok, leave TikTok. We're going to stay on TikTok.
Am I gonna stay on TikTok? I'm not gonna make a statement about staying on TikTok. I don't have like that big a following on TikTok, to be totally honest. And so like, I feel like I'm not somebody that people are like looking to. I'm like deeply curious. Like, not only is it US based, it's owned by somebody who is a very close ally with Donald Trump. Like, it does feel, I also feel like part of why I might stay on TikTok and stay with me is like, I like to follow, like, I'm on Truth Social, not posting, but like, I like to see what Trump says on there. I follow Megyn Kelly and Link Lauren on Instagram. I follow DHS. Like, there's things that I like to be in just to like see what's going on outside of my bubble in my life. And so I'm curious what happens on TikTok, but I feel like you guys have a much more like relationship.
I'm staying.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah, I just don't believe in ceding ground in the middle of the chaos, right? I abandoned Facebook in 2020.
Yeah,
that was real personal. Like, I cannot do this with you all anymore. And then Meta financially incentivized me to come back on the Facebook. But I realized in coming back that I left, but in the process of leaving, I left the opportunity to continue to speak to an audience who's primarily there. Like my metrics on Facebook right now are most of the people who watch my videos are between the age of 50 and 75. Which is wild because on TikTok, it's all millennials, right? So, and the same thing, I feel like a lot of us left X, or the artist formerly known as Twitter, and I understood why we did. Like I did fully understand why we left why we left Twitter. And also in doing so, like we didn't want to make Elon more rich, which I don't think that Matt, he's gonna
doing fine with that.
It left a vacuum. And so the last thing I want to do is give TikTok to the conservative voices, even if they're going to make it more difficult from an algorithmic standpoint. I want to ensure that people still have access to the information they need. And until we're in the spot, because like I also am actively walking around and speaking in a country that I vehemently disagree with its leadership. And so I can't just always cede ground when I disagree with somebody. I have to be on the street, speak truth to power in these spaces.
One question I have for you guys. It's so hard to know now what we're believing. Do you think that the outage, because like we all did it. We all put up a video. I got 0 views on a video I did about, I think it was about Pam Bondi and the voter roll. Before we move on to the next topic, I'm just curious, like, do you think that TikTok is suppressing? Gavin Newsom is now doing an investigation, or do you believe them that it was a data center issue? And like, I'm just curious, like, do you think they are censoring immediately?
Yeah. I mean, so I think that they were they're retraining the algorithm that they did tell us in the cell. And so I think that there's that element. Anytime you do a big data switch over, you're going to have problems. We've had glitches with TikTok before when it was in former ownership. It was weird, but no one had views. Like no one I know, at least. Yeah. I posted 3 videos that all sat at 0 views, and I was just like, well, this is cool. And so I think that like there's multiple things that are true. I think that they're trying their best to retrain or put a new algorithm in place. I think that they have admitted that they're going to censor certain things. I think the whole, like someone tried to send Epstein and it like flagged it. So there's that, which I think is where the investigation with Gavin Newsom is coming from. And I think that like technologically speaking, it is really difficult to take an app that size and just be like, there you go. I think all of those things are happening at the same time. And I try to not go too conspiratorial, but I do think that they would prefer if we are not the biggest voices on there. But ultimately, they're going to give the people what they want because that's where the money is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess one thing I just want to say before we bring in our fantastic guest is there's a lot of celebs who all of a sudden have come out of the woodwork to say, maybe Trump 2.0 wasn't a great idea. And so I just want to quickly round table it. Like, has there been any celeb that you guys have been like, oh, this is ranch? Because for me, yesterday, it was one comedian, Tim Dillon, who I have always...
Oh, really?
Well, I thought for so long that Tim Dillon, Shane Gillis, and Shane Dawson were the same person.
Yes.
Now that I'm really learning who they each are is an insane premise. But I was just like, it's so interesting with Tim Dillon because he platformed so much of this administration. Mm-hmm. But now I think what's happening is he's probably seeing, because he's not doing anything, he's seeing his numbers dip. And something that I think is really that people know is that celebrities do social listening, like big PR firms, in a way that like we can't even fathom. They have this like crazy data software. It's not like stupid Google Trends. It's not like somebody scrolling through and getting the vibe. Now they're realizing like, shit, it's going to hit my bottom line. So I have to put out something. And then it's there curated. So is there any celebrity for you that's come out that you're like, oh, here we go?
Rogan. Like watching Joe Rogan go like, this is a Gestapo, and like, which, yes. And I'm also like, all of these folks, they so created this environment, I think, to your point. And so like, my push on any celebrity who's now saying something is like, cool, utilize that same power, that same platform to get people elected in November who will bring checks and balances to this administration. For all intents and purposes, there's nothing that we can do about the fact that you got them elected in 2024. But we can actually have a Congress and a Senate who will ensure that they cannot go outside the lines and the bounds of executive power. So don't just apologize and say, this has gone too far and I was wrong. I was so wrong that I will make sure that we have at least 2 years of checked and balanced power.
Amen.